Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in as we start another week here. Got a busy one. Had a news-breaking weekend in a lot of different ways. This could be a big week for the war between Russia and the Ukraine, as President Trump will be meeting Russian President Putin on Friday in Alaska. We have the latest details with a senior member of the Russian president, Putin's inner circle, warning that multiple countries are mounting what he called titanic efforts to undermine the upcoming summit between President Trump and Putin. We'll see. We have the latest on that. More than 1,600 illegal migrants on Long Island with past convictions, including MS-13 gang members, murderers, and international fugitives, have been taken into custody by ICE since the start of the year, according to reports from the federal government. Caroline Hill turned down multiple Division I women's track and field scholarships to compete for Division III Rochester Institute of Technology, only to be pushed aside by a biological male who wanted to be on the girls' team. And the coaches allowed it to happen until President Trump put a stop to it. We have her story for you today as well. Remember the Trump border wall materials that were sent to auction by Joe Biden? Millions of dollars worth of materials. President Trump says he wants them back. And the auctioneer says, well, they may have a deal to return the material, said to be worth more than $300 million paid for with our tax dollars.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
There's major development on the world stage, one that's going to send D.C. establishment types, the foreign policy swamp, the military-industrial complex, into absolute panic mode this week. President Donald J. Trump is set to meet with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, August 15th. That's right, a face-to-face summit between the most two consequential leaders in the world, with the war in Ukraine front and center. Now, before I get into what this means, listen to what Russia's own Kirill Dmitry, basically Putin's shadow foreign minister, had to say about it over the weekend. He warned that there will be, quote, titanic efforts underway to try to sabotage the meeting. Now, we all know who he's talking about. The NATO hardliners, the permanent war crowd, the same European elites who've been perfectly fine with dragging this war out for, 3 years now, while innocent people die and billions of dollars are spent. And let's be honest, these aren't conspiracy theories. The political and media class hates the idea of Donald Trump ending this war. You ask why? Well, because peace doesn't line the pockets of the defense lobby. It doesn't give them the excuse to keep pumping billions of taxpayer dollars into Eastern Europe, and it doesn't feed the endless narrative that Russia is the eternal enemy. Remember, during Trump's first term, we didn't have new wars like this. Because of Donald Trump, we do have NATO allies paying more of their fair share now. And Putin, he wasn't rolling tanks deeper into Europe. That all changed under Joe Biden because no one took Biden seriously. No one was afraid of Joe Biden. Joe Biden couldn't deter a bicycle theft, let alone a hostile Kremlin. Now, Trump's saying he's going to sit down with Putin and possibly even Zelensky to hammer out a long-term resolution. And that scares the daylights out of a lot of people in Washington, because a negotiated settlement might mean that Ukraine has to make some tough concessions on territory. And the D.C. war machine can't stomach the idea of an endgame that doesn't look like total Russian defeat no matter the cost. Here's the kicker. Dmitry is already warning that some countries are going to try every trick in the book to derail any type of settlement here, any type of resolution. What's that look like? Well, there's probably going to be lots of leaks. You probably that means bombshell news stories timed perfectly to try to blow up the talks. That means so-called allies suddenly pulling stunts to provoke a reaction from Moscow. If you think these people won't risk torpedoing peace to protect their political investments, you haven't been paying attention. The Kremlin says the focus will be on, quote, long-term peaceful resolutions. But don't forget, there's still enormous disagreement over what that looks like. President Trump has hinted at territory concessions. Ukraine says no way. NATO says no way. And Putin, well, he's going to talk. He's probably going to walk into the room knowing he has leverage, both militarily and politically. We don't know what it looks like, but you got to get somewhere. Ukraine can't continue to think that we're going to keep sending billions of dollars over there. So here's where it really gets real. If President Trump can get Putin and Zelensky to the same table, possibly, that's more than Joe Biden ever even considered doing. The EU or NATO combined have not been able to do it either. And you can bet that while the knives are already out, because if Trump succeeds, it blows up the narrative that peace is impossible without endless escalation. There's going to be all types of tricks coming forward. This summit could prove to be the most important diplomatic moment since President Reagan met with Gorbachev. The stakes are massive. An ongoing war, billions in U.S. taxpayer dollars, and the possibility, it may be slim, but there is a possibility of ending a conflict that's dragged on and cost countless lives. I'll tell you this. If you start seeing sudden crisis between now and say this Friday, the meeting is scheduled for Friday 15th. By the way, I'm headed to Alaska Friday the 15th as well. We're headed to our annual Patriots Alaska cruise with several hundred of my closest radio listener friends, along with Mike Gallagher, Larry Elder, Chris DeGaulle, Jennifer Horn, who is the L.A. morning show host of the Morning Answer in L.A. And we're going to have a great time. And just by coincidence, we arrive in Seattle on Friday to head to Alaska the next morning. So we'll probably miss President Trump. But look, if you see anonymous sources screaming that you can't trust Putin or you can't trust Trump, or if the media starts running wall-to-wall coverage about foreign interference, just remember what you heard right here. The sabotage has probably already begun. For those who want this war to continue, and there are many of them out there. Again, you think about the billions of dollars that are at stake here for some people, for the war industry. And I've never, ever understood that. I mean, I understand people like to make money, and I understand the greed, but I've never understood how people could sleep at night while making money off of people losing their lives, off of people literally losing their towns. You know, last fall, there was a group of pastors from the Ukraine who were visiting the upstate. And I had the honor of interviewing them for this show. And they told me the stories. These were 4 different pastors, and their stories of their literally having to pack up and flee their towns for the safety of themselves and their families. And all 4 of them later learned that their churches had been completely destroyed. They didn't have a home to go back to. Now think about that. And all they want to do is to serve the Lord and help their community. And their community is no more. They have nothing to go back to. So who wants that to continue? But more importantly, who wants to profit off of that? Who wants to, and again, I understand that there are manufacturers out there who build tanks and build trucks and build ammunition. I get that. But if you had a chance for peace, if you had a chance to end this now, isn't there other ways to make money? Isn't there other ways that these manufacturers could survive and make a profit without a continuous war of just literally taking away entire communities, just innocent people? Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. America is in a health crisis, and by America, not just strangers across the country. It's personal. Me, you, friends, and family. And a major cause? Excess weight. Joey Hudson here. The solution isn't expensive shots like Ozempic. It's learning how to eat and think about food differently, and that's what PhD Weight Loss does. Their clients lose up to a third of their body weight, no drugs, just real food, behavioral coaching, and proven science to turn your body into a fat-burning machine. Sure, you could spend up to $20,000 a year on injections that burn muscle, not fat, and come with risks like pancreatitis or bowel blockages, only to gain it all back. PhD helps your body naturally produce weight loss hormones like GLP-1s, no shortcuts, just results that last. Already on Ozempic? Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team will help you safely transition off and keep losing weight. Let's make America healthy again. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900 or visit myphdweightloss.com. I happened to see this story over the weekend, and this is one of those that will just drive you insane. It perfectly sums up the insane, wasteful, backwards priorities that we've been living under for the last number of years. And part of it's about the change. Remember President Trump's border wall, of course. Remember how there was millions and millions of dollars of panels and beams and materials that would have completed the wall, but then, of course, things went south when Joe Biden won the election. All this material was paid for by you and me, our taxpayer dollars. It was meant to keep drugs, criminals, and cartels out of the country. And when Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office in January 2021, one of the first things he did was sign an executive order to stop building the wall. Didn't matter if materials were already bought and paid for. Didn't matter if construction crews were already ready to go and had already started some of this. Didn't matter if the wall was working. Politics over security, period. Joe Biden's way or the highway. So what happened next? Instead of finishing the wall, the Biden administration let those materials, worth somewhere between $260 and $350 million, sit out in the desert, rusting, rotting, while you paid and I paid $130,000 a day for storage and security. And when they finally decided what to do with them, they started auctioning them off like used lawn furniture, sometimes for $1 a panel. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. You can't imagine that anybody would do their own, treat their own money like this. But since it wasn't Joe Biden's money, he didn't care. He didn't care that there was enough material out there to finish building a good portion of the wall. He didn't like it because Donald Trump had said he was going to do it, and Joe Biden was wanting to just quickly undo everything Trump did in Trump 1.0. So you have GovPlanet. That's a global government surplus auction house. They sold thousands of these components at pennies on the dollar. You can't blame them. I mean, look, it's business, and they're in the business to sell stuff. And they get all this government surplus material, all kind of things. You can go online, just search for GovPlanet. You can download their app and bid on your phone. Taxpayer-funded wall parts that could have been protecting our border ended up in the hands of the highest bidder. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says that his state had to buy $12 million worth just to keep building on their own. Senator Joni Ernst called it exactly what it was: Biden selling our security for scrap metal. So fast forward to last week, and here's the twist. GovPlanet just told Fox News that they've reached a deal with the Trump team to return those wall materials at cost so they can be put to use where they belong on our southern border to provide that security that they were intended to do to begin with. So over the next 90 days, according to the report, those panels, those beams, those bollards are going back to federal control, into the hands of a construction team, and eventually into the ground and put in place to do what they're intended to do to begin with. This is huge. It's a reversal of one of the most irresponsible, politically driven blunders of the Biden-Harris era. Now think about it. Border crossings are at historic highs. Fentanyl is pouring in. Cartels like Tren de Aragua are setting up shop in American cities, and Joe Biden's answer was to mothball the wall and auction it off to strangers for pennies. He did not want a wall, period. Now, it would have been one thing, and I could have possibly understood it better if Biden had said, okay, once we finish building the wall that we have the material for and we've already paid for, then we're not going to build it anymore. But no, he stopped it right in the middle of it. We had the material there. Now, under President Trump's leadership, looks like we're going to get that steel back. And we're going to finish what he started. No more storage fees, no more pennies on the dollar sell-offs, and no more pretending a sovereign nation doesn't need borders, secure borders. Art Del Cuto from the Border Patrol Union nailed it, saying this material can still be used. We could be installing it tomorrow, and the fact that we even have to buy back our own border wall from a private auction house is insane. But that's what happens when ideology runs the show instead of common sense. The bottom line is President Trump is already undoing President Joe Biden's mess within the first 6 months. And if you're a taxpayer, if you care about national security, or if you just hate watching Washington burn your money, this is a sign of what we're going to see over the next 3.5 years. America first, border security, and no more giveaways to chaos. Now, imagine if Biden had just finished the wall, again, in the first place. How many crimes, how many overdoses, how many tragedies could have been prevented over the last 4 years? How many families would have their loved ones still sitting in their homes? Young people who have died of fentanyl overdoses, still there to enjoy life with their parents. But we do know this. The next time someone tries to tear down our defenses, they're going to have to answer to the American people and to President Donald Trump because, as we've said many times, there's a new sheriff in town, and things are going to be done differently. And kudos to GovPlanet, the auction house, because they don't have to do this. They could have continued to sell it for pennies on the dollar. Now, I'm sure if you dig deep enough, there's probably a sweet deal in there for them with the U.S. buying the material back. But it's still going to be a lot cheaper than if we had to pay full price for it again, just like we did 4 years ago. Did you happen to watch any of the FedEx Cup St. Jude's Championship over the weekend? Is in Memphis, Tennessee. I just love watching golf. I know some people think it's boring, but to me it's just sort of relaxing and to follow this. And, of course, the FedEx Cup is the biggie. It's the season finale, and that was over the weekend. Well, Eli Manning had a few golfers fooled. He pulled a few stunts. He's, of course, a legendary former quarterback, NFL quarterback. He was pretending to be a FedEx delivery driver who was serving as a tournament volunteer for the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Manning, wearing a tournament volunteer shirt with a bucket hat and sunglasses, sat around a confused group of players. I'm a FedEx courier. That's my real job. Always deliver, especially against the Patriots. And when he said that, Keegan Bradley started laughing and finally realized that it was Eli Manning. Bradley said, "I didn't know that was you." I was like, "Who is this freak over here? Oh, my." Manning also asked to see Jordan Spieth's credential, purposely mispronouncing his name. Manning asked a confused Spieth, "Are you a golfer or a caddy?" And Spieth later said that he was trying to figure out what was going on and who Manning was, and he realized that it was Eli Manning. But look, it was just having some fun, and of course raised a lot of money for St. Jude. But it kind of made the tournament that much more interesting. And of course, I'm sure FedEx paid Manning a lot of money to do that, and he had a lot of fun in order to do that. Bernie Sanders calling out former Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign yesterday. He said it was being that it was being influenced by wealthy people in 2024 and was failing to speak for working class families. Now, this was on CNN State of the Union. Host Dana Bash pressed Sanders on a statement that he made on one of his fighting oligarchy tour stops about the former vice president. Bash played a clip of Sanders telling the crowd, "One of the reasons, in my view, that Kamala Harris lost this election is she had too many billionaires telling her not to speak up for the working class of this country." The CNN host reacted to the clip and said, "Ouch." And Sanders explained, he said, "I like her. She's a friend of mine, but her core consultants, were heavily influenced by very wealthy people. How do you run for president and not develop a strong agenda which speaks to the economic crisis facing working families when you're beholden to billionaires?" And he has a point, doesn't he? Bash pushed back and said that Ms. Harris talked about affordability. Sanders argued that Harris talked about it vaguely, but said he didn't want to rehash the 2024 campaign. I'm sure he doesn't. None of the Democrats want to rehash what happened in 2024. He went on to call for guaranteed health care for all Americans and an increased minimum wage and some of the other things that Bernie Sanders is always promoting. Sanders said that he also, he was asked if he was planning to run again for president, that is, in 2028. He said, let's not worry about that. I'm going to be 84 years of age next month, as a matter of fact, so I think that speaks for itself, and I think it does as well, Senator. As a friend of mine says, that's a little long on the tooth. I think you probably... I think we've seen Bernie Sanders on the ballot for a potential presidency. I think that's all done, all in, all done. Hey, wanted you to hear about another story that caught my attention the other day. We've talked a lot about the craziness, the insaneness of the trans movement within women's sports. It's this story is the perfect example of how the radical gender ideology has been infecting our institutions and has been steamrolling the rights of women, even in places that are supposed to celebrate their achievements. So here's the story. It's about Caroline Hill. She's a talented, hardworking young woman. She turned down multiple Division I track scholarships to compete at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Why? She wanted to excel. She wanted to break records. She wanted to leave her mark, and she did. She set some school records in the 200 and 300 meter race. But then her records were wiped off the board. Not because another young woman beat her, but because a biological male known as Sadie Schreiner joined the team, took her titles, and according to Hill, shared the women's locker room for a few years. So let's pause right there. This wasn't a one-week situation. Ms. Hill says that she trained alongside Schreiner for 2 full seasons. She shared the same locker room, had a locker right next to him, and get this, was expected by her coaches to treat him as an equal competitor, a, quote, workout buddy. She raised her concerns. She told her coach. She told the administration. She told the athletic director. The response, according to Ms. Hill, she was told, "Some of you women have more testosterone than he does." You want to talk about dismissive? Now, that's not just dismissive. That's institutional gaslighting. And these are adults telling this young lady this. Now, after President Trump signed the Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports executive order earlier this year, the NCAA finally saw the light. They finally changed the policy. Schreiner was ruled ineligible to compete. That should have been the end of it, right? Wrong, according to Ms. Hill. She says that Schreiner kept training with the women, kept using the women's locker room for another month. He kept hanging around. And this is exactly what critics have warned about. That even when rules change, schools and sports organizations will drag their feet, afraid to enforce them because they're terrified of the woke outrage mob that comes along with the movement. They didn't want to tell this young man, oh, whoops, okay, sorry, you can't go back to the women's locker room. You can't continue to work out with them. You can't continue to compete with them. And let's be clear, Hill isn't just bitter about losing a record. This is about fairness, about safety, about respect. Women fought for decades for their own space in athletics. We've talked about this many times, for the right to compete on a level playing field. That's what Title IX is all about. It's supposed to guarantee this right. But under the current culture, the rights of one trans-identifying athlete were treated more important than the rights of every woman on that team. He was allowed to walk into the women's locker room. This young lady told the story of how because his locker was right next to hers, that she had to go to another area to change clothes because she didn't want to do it in front of him. It's why Riley Gaines and other brave female athletes are suing the NCAA. And now Caroline Hill, the reason this story has come to the forefront, she has stepped forward publicly, putting her name on the lawsuit as well. And that takes courage for some of these young women, because speaking out in this climate is not just unpopular. It can get you harassed, threatened, shunned. Caroline Hill wants her records back, and she should get them back. She wants an apology from her school, from RIT. And frankly, she deserves both, I think. But more importantly, she's shining a light on the harm that was done to women's sports and will continue to be done in some areas until it's put a stop to. The mental, emotional, the physical toll of forcing young women to compete against and share intimate spaces with biological males. And again, in some spaces, continuing to do so even after the threat of taking away federal grant dollars. So here's the bottom line. Women's sports exist for women, born biological women, young ladies. If a man takes your records, takes your spot, takes your scholarship, even takes your locker room, then there's nothing left to protect, is there? This is why policies matter. This is why President Trump's executive order matters. And this is why more women like Caroline Hill and the others who are standing up for their rights should be applauded and should be supported. This is why they should step forward and not be afraid to step forward to defend their sport. I mean, I can't imagine a young lady at that age in the locker room and a young man walks in and has the locker next to hers, and she's expected to dress and undress, to shower and all right there beside him. What adult thinks that's okay? And these school administrators, they were more afraid of the mob, of the woke mob, than they were of doing the right thing and protecting these young women's rights, protecting their safety, protecting their dignity, protecting their respect. And all they're concerned about is the woke mob who's going to protest and run around with signs in their hands because they won't let a young man go into the girls' locker room, or they won't let a young man compete on the women's track team. At least President Trump recognizes this, and it looks like we're headed to end this once and for all. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. they do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. I got a text in response to a story I talked about, I think it was on Friday of last week, about military training and whether or not our military is as ready as it could be. And what prompted this whole thing was Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth last week announced that they were going to get back to some of the basics in training, some of the old-style training that they used to do. And, of course, during the Biden administration, they stopped it because it was too difficult. It was too hard on these young men and young women going into the military. So Dom in Illinois wrote, hey, Joey, your report about military training. As a Vietnam-era Marine Corps veteran, I have to say that my basic training started the minute I stepped off the plane and did not stop for 13 weeks. Once we deplaned at our training site, the Marine DIs swarmed us individually as they started breaking us down so they could build us back up as Marines, the finest and fiercest fighting force on the planet. After all, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. They yelled, they screamed, they broke us down mentally and physically. They tore us down and built us back up as young men and women who could live up to the Marine Corps' reputation and traditions of over 200 years, 250 this year. It wasn't called Shark Attack back then. It was called taking young men and women and turning them into lifelong Marines. They not only taught us how to fight, they taught us respect. They taught us how to have pride in and love our country, and they taught us how to stay alive. I'm forever proud to have served as a United States Marine, and I will be forever grateful to those DIs, drill instructors, for having made me who I am today, no matter how sharky it may have seemed at the time. Dom. Well, thank you, Dom. And thank you for your service, of course. And Dom's right. I've had a lot of you text and email, and people that I've known and talked to over the years talk about how that training, that boot camp, yeah, it was rough at the time, but it prepared many of you who served to be ready. And that's the important thing for sure. Hey, interesting thing over the weekend. You know, for the last couple of weeks, occasionally I'll have Drew McKissick on the show, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. In fact, I'm set to talk with Drew a little later today. And he's been talking about the Silver Elephant Dinner. It's the annual, or actually I guess it's every 2 years maybe. It's the big Republican fundraiser in South Carolina. There's been some great speakers over the years. I remember way back when, this was after Richard Nixon had left the White House in disgrace, and some years later, as he was sort of coming back into the public fold, if you will, he had written a book, and he was the speaker, and I was fortunate enough to have to been invited and go to the dinner and had a chance to meet President Nixon. There's been other great, President Reagan spoke. So it's a big thing. So the GOP faithful on Saturday night had all gathered. They were dressed up in their party attire, and you had about 700 people, I think, just over 700 people in the room. Big donors dropping up to $1,000 or so for a pre-dinner reception with Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who was the main speaker. And as the story goes, and I wasn't there, I didn't go, but as the story goes, Senator Lindsey Graham walks on stage, holds his phone up to the microphone, and says, "Hey, folks, guess who I played golf with today?" And out comes that unmistakable accent, Donald J. Trump himself. And the crowd, again, as reported, as I heard, just loses it. Because let's face it, South Carolina is Trump country. We have been good to him. 55% in 2016. Again, in 2020, 55%, and 58% in 2024. So the president comes on and he's speaking to the crowd via Lindsey Graham's phone, and he reminds them that South Carolina's been a special state. He said, "You've made it that way." And he calls Graham a great guy, says he's got his full endorsement, and basically tells the room this won't even be a contest. So once again, Lindsey Graham getting the full endorsement of President Donald J. Trump for his reelection. Of course, Lindsey Graham up for reelection next year. Now, the story goes that Graham did not even mention the campaign. He just let President Trump do the selling. And let's be honest, folks, if you're a Republican in South Carolina, Donald Trump's blessing is political gold. But not everyone in the room saw it that way. According to reports in the state newspaper, I think it was, Paul Dans, one of Graham's primary challengers, said it smacked of desperation. And he accused Senator Graham of force-feeding the endorsement to the crowd. I mean, that's the kind of primary season spice we're going to see more of, because you got multiple people who are, of course, running against Lindsey Graham. But you tell me. I'd love to get your feedback. You can text me. You can email me. You can leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY. Was it okay for Lindsey Graham to have brought President Trump into the equation? I mean, that was okay, wasn't it? I mean, look, if you've got his endorsement, if he's supporting you, you need to let people know, right? And it was a pretty good treat for the people who were at the dinner to have the president talking to him. Now, meanwhile, you had Governor Glenn Youngkin standing backstage, I'm sure thinking, well, there goes my applause. To his credit, he came out swinging anyway, talking about Revolutionary War hero Francis Marion, rallying the crowd to keep the GOP majority in Congress and hammering home those common sense conservative values, faith, family, and freedom. But the reality is this. Trump stole the show without even being in the room. A 3-minute phone call, and it was the loudest applause of the night, according to people who were there who told me about it. That's the political gravity that President Trump carries. Even with the 2028 speculation swirling around Governor Youngkin, even with state races gearing up, the second Trump's voice came over the mic, I'm told the entire mood in the room shifted. Not surprising, though, is it? And this is the takeaway. Love Trump, hate Trump, most of us love him. He is still the central force in Republican politics. Candidates can give their speeches. Governors can headline galas like on Saturday. But when President Donald Trump decides to drop in, he's the story every time. and there's no way to avoid that. By the way, speaking of the 2026 race for U.S. Senate, former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, who made a big splash a few weeks ago saying he was going to get in the race, he was going to take the seat from Lindsey Graham. Turns out things aren't going so well, I guess, for Andre Bauer, because on Friday, he posted on social media this message. This decision does not come lightly. I entered this race with a servant's heart, believing that our nation needs leaders who are grounded in truth, integrity, and faith. This was on X, I'm sorry. He said, but I believe now more than ever that in order for us to truly move forward, we must stop tearing one another down with lies and division. He went on to explain that he's out of the race. I guess he can't stomach the new political reality and what it takes to run for office, like it or not, than when Andre Bauer was lieutenant governor many years ago. Andre Bauer is out. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com. And I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.